live on YouTube as well. And I want to tell you all, before we're going to get started pretty much right now, and I want to tell you all that this month we're focused on grief, navigating trauma and loss. And it's based on our newest Katthe resource, which is called Grief Compass, Navigating Trauma and Loss. And so our whole month is around vitality and grief. So you might have noticed that. And today it's one of our half-hour conversations. We've had guest presenters for the last 2 weeks. Ahmed Abudradeh did decolonization for well-being, and Judith Ehrman Shapiro last week was grief, and they were both architects of the Grief Compass deck. So today we're going to just talk, and I think this is one of the first ones that's not specifically about death, I guess. You know, it's not about how you feel grief in your body. It's more about grieving bodies as they change, whether that's as a result of aging or whether that's as a result of, you know, something that happens or a choice, you know. So anyway, love it if you say hi as you come in. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Anna. Hi, Denise. And let's go to the next slide. This is Paul is with me here from Be Strong Families. He's our tech support guy today. Very competent, grateful to have him backing me up. The chat is the primary way to engage. That's why it's so important that you direct it to panelists and attendees, because then everybody can see what you're writing. And you'll be talking to each other, not just to me. So questions, comments, responses, the chat is yours. And if you want to, I mean, there are times when I will probably be saying, would somebody like to speak? You know, and even if I'm not saying that, you always have the option to raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, Paul will unmute you, and then you will unmute yourself, and then you'll be able to speak. So the last bit of housekeeping is just that whenever Be Strong Families does anything, we recognize that we co-create this safe space together to have these transformative conversations. So we have agreements. And our agreements for these webinars are: speak from your own experience, treat other people the way you want to be treated, and please no multitasking. And then for this one, you might have seen pop up: if you need a minute, take a minute. And that's because, you know, the nature of these conversations can be, well, first of all, there are things that you might need to do around you, taking care of yourself or taking care of a little person around you. And we understand that, you know, you might need to disconnect and then come back. But also the nature of these conversations can be triggering because it's deep stuff that we're talking about. And so if you feel like you just need to, it's getting too intense, just please feel free to just walk away, turn off your camera, we can't see you anyway, but walk away and come back when you're ready. So if you agree to these agreements, do like Michelle and Denise and Kara and Anna, hi Kara, have done, and Kelly, great, and just agree. And then we can move directly into conversation. So the first question is, when you signed up for the Zoom, when you read the description, what did you think of when you saw the topic for this webinar? And what did you want to be part of the conversation? When you saw the topic, physical vitality and body-based grief, what did you think? What did you think we were going to be talking about? And what did you want to be part of the conversation? Or why did you want to be part of the conversation? Give you a minute. While you're busily typing, if somebody would like to raise their hand to answer the question, that would also be welcome. Why did you want to be part of this conversation? What's going on for you? Kimberly says to normalize feelings, either emotional or physical. Nice. That seems to be part of what these webinars about, is like sometimes we're talking about taboo topics or just topics that people don't often talk about. So you're carrying it, in your body, in your heart, in your mind, you're carrying these feelings, and because they're not often talked about, they kind of can just be heavy. They can get heavy. Michelle says, I know that I'm an emotional eater. I tend to eat more when I'm grieving. Mm-hmm. And Denise says, ways I carry my grief. Are there healthier ways? And Kara says, to take care of yourself physically as well as mentally. And Leslie says, validating how trauma is stored in the body and it manifests in different ways. And Kelly says, wondering if some new physical concerns I have are the result of a recent traumatic loss. Great. So let's just dive in there before we go to our questions. Let's just dive in there and say, what do you notice when you're grieving? What do you notice happens in your body? Maybe tired, exhausted, low energy, lots of exhaustion, lots of needing to recharge. Nervous stomach, Kelly says, unexplained pains. Elise says, become distant, stomach problems. Kara says, that whole stomach thing, what reminds me of it, and I'm sure people, maybe you've Googled this or maybe you know about it, but we actually have 3 nervous systems. We have a nervous system around our heart where there are neurons in our heart that goes both ways to your brain, and then in central nervous system. And there's also the enteric nervous system, which is the gut brain. And that sends as many signals to the brain as it receives. And there are tons of neurons in your gut. And so there's a lot of research going on now about also like the gut flora and how the biology of your gut affects your mood and affects your well-being. But it's also like, this is part of how we navigate life instinctually, is our stomach or our gut is experiencing things, and it is communicating with us. So trouble sleeping, Kelly says. Wow. Kara says, my hair turned white within 3 months from a little salt and pepper. So you were a little salt and pepper and then your hair turned white within 3 months. Was that after a loss or a trauma? When did that happen, Kara? Oh, after your husband passed in March. I'm so sorry for your loss, Kara. And then your hair turned white within 3 months. Wow. Anybody else have that happen? That kind of thing happen where there was like a physical manifestation of change, life change? How would you know? Elise says, I think so, yes, but the research doesn't show up. Elise, you did that to panelists, but what do you mean the research doesn't show up, or you think so? Can you raise your hand? You want to talk and let us know what's going on? Don't have to. Oh,
Can you
great.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yes. I was saying, so about a year ago, I think that I was under a lot of stress. It was like a very stressful 2 months. And so then I started developing like, inflammation and swelling. I was having some of the same stomach issues that people were listing in the chat. And then a lot more like weird symptoms were coming up, went to the doctors, and then they are diagnosing me with an autoimmune disease. But it's very interesting to me because the medications don't necessarily help the symptoms.
Hmm.
What I find is that when I make sure that my mental health is okay and I'm like, doing yoga and praying, then that's when everything else seems to kind of calm down.
Yeah.
I was also, naturopathic doctor, things like that. And they talked about like the leaky gut and just understanding that the gut, well, mental health does affect our gut. The conversation and the research is really not there. But doctors are so quick sometimes to just label us with things. But I think that there's a much bigger picture, especially if you like can pinpoint when things start and then what symptoms came with that.
Wow. Yeah, I resonate with that, Elise, just being able to pinpoint when things start and just kind of, I guess what I think, and this is not, I don't know that there's research on this, but Louise Hay wrote books about it, which is I feel like my body is always communicating with me, and especially when I get sick or when something happens, I don't just look at like that I got sick. I look at where I got sick, how I got sick, and then I like try to understand what my body is saying to me. So there's like, if you think of it that way, it's just one lens. I'm not saying don't take medicine or don't do what helps to make it better, but I always think like I give you an example. My lungs have always been a vulnerable place in my body. Since I was a small child, I had asthma. But when I was involved in, when I was married, I got really bad bronchitis and then pneumonia, and I was in the hospital, and it was very dramatic. Okay, it was like the most dramatic piece of time before I got married. This was happening, and I look in retrospect. What I think is my body was telling me, you can't breathe. Like this, you can't breathe in the choices that you're making right now. Like they're not going to be good for the long haul. I feel like my body was trying to tell me that from the very beginning, because there were some major changes that I'd made, and my body was saying, you can't breathe in this. And so I feel like, it's like I got bronchitis every year for the 8 years that I was married. And then when I got divorced, I stopped getting bronchitis. So, and that wasn't like, when people talk about psychosomatic, it's real illness. It's real serious. Like, it goes away when you either get acupuncture or you take the meds or whatever. I mean, it's real manifestations, but can be, I feel like a good way of thinking about it for me is that my body is trying to communicate with me. Yes, the body knows, Elise says. Thank you, Elise. Thank you for sharing. So Anna's moving us to our next. Okay, wait. Denise says, I have been a morning person for decades. After a loss, I have never returned to it. Even though I miss the sunrise, I can't get myself going until at least 7 a.m. That's interesting, Denise. Really interesting. Anna is moving us to the next question, actually. Anna says she's grieving the loss of her legs because of knee replacement. My whole body changed, and I would like my old body. And this started in 2019, and then again 2020 because of 2 knee replacements. Can you move to the next slide, Paul, please? So this was our question, is how do you process unwanted, unexpected, or natural changes in your physical body? And again, these questions come from our grief deck. So if you like these conversations, you can have them in your community or with your friends or as part of your cafes. So how do you deal when you say you're grieving the loss of your legs, Anna? I get it, because of the knee replacement. Not sure exactly how your whole body changed. Maybe you want to raise your hand. But also, like, what does the grieving of your legs look like? How does that manifest for you? And how are you processing it?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
When I'm saying my legs is because you always think your body will always be part of you. And then when they cut out, because I got to see what truly knee replacements are, I have 2 legs that are now, I call them fake legs, okay? I gained weight because I couldn't work out. And then when I thought I was going back to working out, I ended up having to have another knee replacement. And I gained more weight because of that. And it's like sometimes I give up because does it really matter? These are not my knees. And I think when we're talking about all this, like how does your body physically change? What to do with the unexpected? But I know I need to snap out of it and just go back. And because they're not my knees, I can still do it, but I got to do it in my brain to say, these are now my legs. I have to accept the body change. And that is so hard. I feel like sometimes we need to go into therapy just for something that has happened drastically to your body.
Thank you for sharing that. Other people feel this way as well? I mean, I was listening to you, Anna. I was listening to you say, these are not my knees. These are not my legs. I get that one thing that you said is that you've gained weight as a result of the surgeries and not being able to work out. And that's one like concrete physical thing. And that happens with grief as well. For, if you're, to me, it happens with grief where you're not as physically active, or you're emotionally eating, and then you're gaining weight, and then your body is changing, or my body is changing in ways that I'm not like thrilled about, and I don't like looking in the mirror anymore. I get that part of it exactly. The part about the knee replacement and feeling like those aren't, like you can't relate to your body anymore because it's not yours, or those are not your legs, those are not your knees. Like, how do other people make friends with a body part that's different than it should be, or than we wanted it to be, or than it was? How do you make friends with that? If you've had surgery, like a mastectomy, or, like if you've had things happen to your body that make it feel like this is not my body. I sometimes feel that way just with the aging body. Like, I have a sense of my body when I was probably in my early 30s that really felt like that was my body. And then this body that I'm walking around with, it's not really my body. Like, I'm always surprised when I look in the mirror. I don't know if anybody's had that. Denise says she has issues with lungs. I sometimes try to laugh it off, saying to some people it's sports or art. I suck at breathing, right? Kara says, I was happy and accepted my hip replacement easily due to no more pain. So how about that aspect of it, Anna? Are you feeling less pain as a result of your knee replacements, or has it been tough recovery? What?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is that, your pain when you have your own legs, your pain's totally different. Now you walk and you hear all these creaks and you're like, my knees never creak like that. But I have the total knee replacement where, I don't even want to get into big detail because I would gross everybody out, because the procedure is so intense that, like in church, I wanted to kneel down. I could not kneel. I tried everything. And people are looking at me like, what is wrong with that girl over there? It's because she's overweight. She can't get up. Well, these knees don't function like your true knees. They don't flex, they don't bend. I did exercise yesterday. I used to do boot camps. I can't run no more. I walk like I'm a turtle. So it's just so many different things. And the reason when you say, can you relate to other people? There's so many people in the gym that have total knee replacements that I find myself, God, am I going to look like that pretty soon? Because a lot of people don't even do half of what I do. But I've decided not to be the one in statistics. But I find myself after I done workout, I go home and I binge because then I'm depressed because I hurt. So then it's one of these never-ending cycles.
Well, hopefully it will be an ending cycle. I feel like part of what conversation does is, like, you hear yourself saying it and then you notice how you might be locking into it because, and if you just create a little more space around it, it might assist you. I'm not trying to fix it. I understand it's your relationship with your new body, but just creating a little more space around it, that there are probably maybe other parts of your body that don't work the way they used to too, you know, and yet they're still yours, you know. So yeah, thank you, Anna. Because it's like then you watch yourself and think of, okay, so could I create a little more space around this? Could I create a little more openness with this relationship with my new knees? And are there positive things that happened as a result of getting the new knees? Like that's where I think Kara was going. And I know my sister and my mom have had knee replacement surgeries. And for my mom, it was like immediately, like Kara says, a real just immediate cessation of pain, and it was much better. But for my sister, she had really hard recovery with the knees, and it wasn't the same thing. She had pain, she had a different kind of pain. It wasn't the same pain, but it was different kind of pain. So other people have things to say about changes in your physical body and processing them. Who has had a difficult time, but then got it being less difficult and or accepted it, and how did that happen? Paul says he's definitely changed some of his eating and caffeine habits as he's gotten older. I noticed something when I first got, like, this is aging, but when I first got these lines in the middle of my forehead that some people, I guess, Botox away. And I was looking at my neck. This was maybe like 5 or 10 years ago. I was looking at my neck and I was thinking, seeing these rings like I'm a tree or something. And I really hated it. I really hated it. And then I bought some moisturizing cream that's called Egyptian Magic. It's got bee propolis in it. It's a pretty natural thing with olive oil and stuff. And I started after I take a shower, I started like rubbing it on my neck. And I don't know if my neck has gotten better and it doesn't look as, you know, if the moisturizing has helped it, or if it's just bringing extra love to that area of my body has made it so that it's not as offensive to me. I don't know if that makes sense, or if anybody's had an experience like that of deciding to bring love to a part, something that was, you know, really bothersome. Similarly, I mean, I guess this is what happens when you get older. I have a floater in my eye. I don't know if anybody's ever had a floater in your eye where you have a little black spot that is always kind of there, you know? And when it first came, I was like doing everything I could to get rid of it. Like I went to have acupuncture, not in my eyes. They didn't put needles in my eyes. I kind of wished it went away, but it didn't. But now I've kind of like got used to it, and it's not so bothering to me anymore. I kind of created a relationship with it. It's like, okay, you're gonna be here, you're gonna be here. It's okay. It'll be like I'm looking through a screen or something. Denise says she has floaters. Yeah. And how do you relate to your floaters? Are you annoyed by them? Are you angry at them? Have you at all like accepted them? Just a question. Let's go to the next question, Paul, because we have just a couple more. So shifting to, when have you had to grieve changes in someone else's body, and how did you do that? And how does love factor into the process? This is another set of questions from the grief deck. They bother me when it blocks what I'm trying to see. Yeah, I know, right? What if you had to grieve changes to someone else's body, like someone, and how does love factor into the process? It could be extreme changes, like somebody that you love or you know was doing a gender reassignment, like different, you know, shifting their gender and their body changed as a result. Or can just be like somebody you know had knee replacement surgery. Somebody you love had knee replacement surgery, or someone you love had, you know, a heart attack and had to, and so when have you had to grieve changes to someone else's body, and how did you do that? children. Chat's kind of quiet. Are you thinking about it, or is it just not an issue? It's never happened. Michelle says, my daughter has a TBI from when I had her. Traumatic brain injury? Is that what a TBI is? I've had to grieve the child she might have been. Wow. And Kelly says, it was my husband's hip replacement. So hard for him because he was always an athlete, and that limited him. Lots of understanding was necessary. So what assisted you, Michelle, or what assisted you, Kelly? Like, how did you, I mean, it's a big question because it's not like a simple, you know, it's a lot. But what's been most helpful to you in grieving the child she might have been, or what's been most helpful with you with dealing with your husband's hip replacement and his limitations, I guess, his emotional and physical limitations as a result of the changes that he's undergoing? And if I'd like to invite you to raise your hand too, because it might be too much to say. Michelle, we're also creating a deck. I've had to focus on the great things she's able to do. She has a great faith in Jesus, and she's a great dancer as well. Nice. Isn't that, you know, it's a deep lesson, a deep teaching to like focus on what someone is good at. You know, focus on the beauty in them. You know, it's interesting. This is kind of not directly about body changes, but I know that I've had that experience with my son. You know, it's just if I focus on all the limitations or the things that aren't going well or whatever, I have one experience. And if I just kind of like key into, not with denial, but I guess key into the things that are beautiful about how he is in the world and who he is, I have a much better experience of the relationship. Kelly says, I've had to use empathy and not apathy. LOL. I've always kind of brushed off small health concerns, but I needed to realize what he was feeling. Yeah. That's really beautiful, Kelly. It's a very, and thank you for both of you, Michelle and Kelly, thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to share. Because I think that both of these are those whole worlds in each one of what you're saying. And that empathy and apathy, I resonate with that, you know, kind of, come on, get over it. You know, like, it's not productive to dwell on this, you know, like I can be very much that way. But that kind of does block me from being willing to be with a person who's struggling and who's suffering, and not to, when it can't be fixed. And it's not about fixing it. It's just about being there. And I think that's something that we learned last week also, or that we emphasized last week with Judith and grief and watching others grieve on was it Friday or Thursday? On Thursday. And also just, you know, just how important it is for a lot of us when we're grieving to have people who are willing to just be with us and listen or not listen as we feel we want to talk. But it's just a very huge gift to be able to give to another person, is just to be there with them as they go through their journey. Okay, I got it, Kelly. Thank you so much. And now it's like 12:29, so we're gonna like head out. So I hope these questions, I mean, I wanted to leave us with the serenity prayer because I think that's, to me, this is sometimes helpful. In terms of just accepting what's going on with my body. And like when I was younger, I was very focused on changing it. I was very focused on having to lose weight if I got overweight, and having to like try to beat my body into submission, or get it to do what I needed it to do. And it was a very intense, and now I'm kind of like, what does acceptance look and feel like? And also, like, when do I when Paul's talking about changing eating habits, or as you get older, and when do I decide to love myself the way I am, but also recognize that some ways of eating and some ways of drinking make so that I have a whole lot of trouble moving in the morning, like I have a lot of pain, and some ways are relatively, the pain goes down. So I think acceptance, courage, and wisdom are three virtues, spiritual virtues, if you will, that can assist us on this journey to dealing with body-based grief. And yes, acceptance is difficult, Denise. Next slide, Paul. So let's see, this week on Tuesday and Thursday, Alejandro Salinas, who was one of the architects of the grief deck, will be here to talk about, or to do a workshop with you about dreams in grief and dying. And there's two parts to it. They're an hour each. So I think it's going to be fascinating. I wish I could host him. I'm going to be assisting a good friend and mentor with the funeral of her mom. So I'm not going to be on the webinars for the next few days, but Alexandra will be here on Wednesday, and that's financial vitality after the death of the loved one, both positive inheritance and negative, having difficulty with the finances around death. And then we're off on Friday, Be Strong Families, for Juneteenth. Wish you a happy Juneteenth. And next slide, Paul. This is the resource that I was talking about. The questions from today came from this resource, and we encourage you, if you're already doing cafes, this is based around the domains of vitality. And we're also going to have one coming out soon, some of you might be interested in, on Strength for the Journey, for parents of children with disabilities. So we look for that one and get this one if it resonates with you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Paul's put in the chat all the ways that you can get recordings, listen to the recordings, or get the PowerPoints. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we have the links there real quick. We'll be seeing you later. We're going to be shutting it down for the next session. If you have any questions. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody.